morning sun spilled through the half-open blinds of their suburban Chicago home, painting soft lines across the kitchen counter. Emily stood quietly by the window, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. She wasn't watching anything in particular, just the empty driveway, where Michael's car had disappeared 15 minutes ago. He'd left without a word again. No kiss, no glance, not even the usual, "Don't wait up." It used to be different. 3 years ago, Michael would pull her into his arms before leaving, tease her about burning the toast, and promise to bring her flowers after work. Now, he was just gone. Even when he was home, he wasn't there. Always buried in work emails or pretending to be asleep on the couch. The house had become quiet, too quiet. Not the comforting kind of silence, but the kind that echoed loneliness through every wall. Emily had stopped complaining months ago. What was the point? Every time she tried to talk, Michael turned defensive. "Emily, I'm tired. I've had a long day," he'd say, not looking up from his phone. And she'd nod, smile faintly, and walk away, swallowing another piece of herself to keep the peace. Michael worked as a senior project manager at a real estate firm. His life revolved around deadlines, meetings, and proving himself to a boss who didn't even know his wife's name. He told himself he was doing it for her, for their future, for the big house they'd always dreamed of. But somewhere in that chase for success, he'd lost sight of her, the quiet woman who used to wait by the door just to hug him when he came home that night. When he returned, Emily was sitting on the couch with the TV on mute. Her eyes followed him, searching for some sign of warmth. "Dinner's in the oven," she said softly. "Not hungry," Michael muttered, loosening his tie. Scrolling through his messages, he didn't see her face fall. Didn't notice how she clenched her hands to stop them from shaking. He didn't hear the sound of something breaking, not a glass, but a heart that was running out of strength to hope. Later, when he finally looked up from his phone, she was going to probably upstairs, he thought. He turned off the lights and went to bed without checking. But Emily wasn't sleeping. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back didn't look like her anymore. Her hair was still the same soft brown, her eyes still a deep green, but they'd lost their shine. She looked empty. Forgotten. She opened the drawer beside her bed and pulled out an old photo album. It was from their early years, pictures of beach trips, late-night pizza, messy birthdays, and quiet mornings when love was enough. She traced her fingers over Michael's smile, the one that used to light up her world. She wondered when it had disappeared. Maybe it had been fading all along. She'd been too busy trying to hold everything together to notice. Downstairs, Michael's phone buzzed with a message from his colleague, Samantha. "You still up? That meeting report can wait." "You need a break," he replied. "Just trying to finish up. Thanks." He hesitated for a moment before locking the phone. He didn't see the danger, didn't sense the slow drift that had already begun. It wasn't an affair, not yet, but it was an escape. An emotional distance that grew wider with every ignored conversation and every "I'm fine" he never questioned. The next morning, Emily made pancakes his favorite, but Michael was already running late. "I'll grab something on the way," he said, buttoning his shirt. She smiled weakly. "Sure, drive safe." Her voice trembled, but he didn't notice. When the door closed, she finally let the tears fall. It wasn't the first time she cried like this. It was just the first time she realized he'd stopped hearing her silence. That evening, Emily didn't cook. She didn't wait by the door. She didn't text him to ask when he'd be home. She just sat on the floor by the window, hugging her knees, listening to the rain hit the glass. It was peaceful in a strange, hollow way. At 11:47 p.m., Michael walked in. He looked at her sitting there, her face lit faintly by the streetlight outside. "You didn't eat?" he asked. "I wasn't hungry," she said without emotion. "You okay?" "I'm fine." He nodded, relieved that there was no fight. He never understood that "I'm fine" was the loudest scream of all. As he walked away, she whispered so quietly that even the rain didn't hear it. "No, Michael. You just stopped seeing me." That night, she slept facing the window, and for the first time, she didn't turn when he climbed into bed. In the following days, nothing changed outwardly. Michael went to work. Emily stayed home. They talked, but not really. They smiled, but not at each other. It was the kind of slow death only two people in love could experience, one heartbeat at a time. And yet behind that silence, something was beginning to break inside Emily. Not with anger, but with resolve. She realized she couldn't make him love her again. She couldn't keep pouring herself into someone who no longer noticed when she was empty. So she started writing. Late at night, when Michael was asleep, she'd open her laptop and pour out her thoughts. Letters she'd never send. Words he'd never read. Her pain became paragraphs. Her loneliness became lines. And every word carried the weight of the life she'd once dreamed of. Meanwhile, Michael told himself everything was fine. Emily wasn't complaining, so she must be okay. He was even proud of how peaceful things had become between them. But peace built on silence is only calm before the storm. Because one night soon, something would happen that would shake his entire world. And by the time he finally realized her silent pain, it would already be too late. Asterisk, the next few weeks passed like a routine neither of them wanted to admit was broken. Michael left before sunrise, came home long after dark, and Emily stopped waiting. The mornings once filled with the sound of laughter, now echoed with nothing but the ticking clock on the kitchen wall. The air between them was heavy, not with words, but with everything left unsaid. Michael noticed small things changing, but he ignored them. The framed picture of their wedding that used to sit on the nightstand was gone. The home-cooked meals he once took for granted had been replaced with leftovers or simple sandwiches. Emily had stopped asking about his day, and when she did speak, her voice carried the polite tone of a stranger. One night, Michael came home to find Emily sitting at the dining table, her laptop open, her eyes red from tears. "You're still up?" he asked casually, tossing his jacket on the chair. She didn't look at him. "I couldn't sleep." He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "You should see someone about that. Maybe Dr. Lewis?" Emily let out a faint laugh, not amused, just tired. "Yeah, maybe." He didn't ask why she couldn't sleep. He didn't ask what she'd been writing all night. And she didn't offer. That was their relationship now, to people living parallel lives, pretending they still intersected somewhere later. When she finally went to bed, Michael scrolled through his phone. A new message from Samantha blinked at the top of the screen. "Tough day again. Hope you're doing okay." He smiled slightly before replying, "Same old." "Thanks for checking in. It wasn't cheating," he told himself. Just harmless conversation. She listened, something Emily no longer did. He convinced himself that he deserved that small escape, that it didn't mean anything. But every time he typed a message to Samantha, he pulled himself further away from the woman lying next to him. The next morning, Emily found a text notification on Michael's phone when she picked it up to silence his alarm. "Don't work too hard today, Mr. Overachiever." Her hand froze. She didn't open it, didn't scroll, didn't scream. She just stared at it until her chest began to ache. The tears didn't come, not anymore. She had already cried enough for both of them. When Michael woke up, she handed him the phone. "You forgot to set your alarm again," she said, calm and distant. "Thanks," he said, kissing her forehead lightly before rushing to the shower. He never noticed how her body stiffened at his touch. That afternoon, Emily went out alone for the first time in months. She drove to the lake where they used to walk on weekends. The same bench where he'd once told her he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her now sat empty like a monument to promises time had erased. She sat there for hours, watching couples walk hand in hand. She wondered when she stopped being someone's forever and became someone's routine. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Sometimes the loudest goodbye is silence." When she came home, Michael was in the living room, laptop on his knees, talking on a work call. "Yeah, Samantha, send me the files by morning," he said without realizing she'd entered. Her footsteps froze midway. He turned and smiled awkwardly. "Just work stuff." "I know," she replied softly. "It always is." He didn't understand what she meant. Maybe he didn't want to. That night, she finally asked, "Michael, are you happy?" He frowned. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you don't look like you are." "I'm just tired, Emily. You know how things are at work." She nodded slowly. You've been tired for 2 years. He didn't reply. He couldn't. The truth was he wasn't happy either. But instead of facing it, he walked away straight into the comfort of distraction. When he left the room, Emily whispered, I'm tired too, Michael. Just not of work. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional distance turned into a cold war of silence. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, Michael's company dinner. Emily had offered to come, but he said it was just a work thing and she'd be bored. She stayed home, watching old movies, pretending she didn't care. At 11 p.m., his car pulled into the driveway. He stumbled in, laughing faintly, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. Emily stood by the stairs, watching him. Had fun? She asked quietly. He froze. It was just a dinner. With Samantha. He blinked. What are you talking about? I saw the message, Michael. I didn't say anything because I wanted to believe it meant nothing. But tell me the truth. Do you still love me? His mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence between them was heavier than any lie he could have told. Emily nodded slowly. That's all I needed to know. She turned and walked upstairs, her footsteps calm, her voice steady. But inside, she felt like she was breaking apart one last time, and somehow, it didn't even hurt anymore. The next morning, she wasn't there. The bed was cold, her clothes were gone. Her ring left neatly on the dresser beside a letter addressed to him. Michael's heart pounded as he tore it open. The first line made his hands tremble. Michael, I loved you even when you stopped loving me. But love shouldn't have to beg for attention. Each word cut deeper. She wrote about her loneliness, her sleepless nights. The way she'd watched him drift away, piece by piece, until she became invisible in her own marriage. The last line read, You'll realize what you lost. But by then, I'll be gone, not out of anger, but out of peace. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, the ring glinting under the morning light. For the first time in years, he cried, really cried. He called her, but she didn't answer. He drove to her parents' house, to her favorite cafe, to the lake. She was nowhere. For days he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The house that once echoed with silence now screamed her absence in every corner, and that's when he realized her pain wasn't sudden. It had been there all along, silent, patient, waiting for him to notice, but he never did. Not until she was gone. The days turned into weeks, and Michael's life began to unravel in slow motion. Every morning felt heavier than the last. He'd wake up expecting to hear Emily humming in the kitchen, the faint clink of her coffee spoon, the gentle rhythm of her presence that had once filled the house with warmth. But there was only silence now, a suffocating kind of silence that reminded him of everything he'd destroyed. He went to work, but he couldn't focus. He'd stare at his computer screen for hours, scrolling through meaningless emails. His colleagues noticed his distraction, but no one dared to ask. Samantha, the one he once thought understood him, stopped texting after a few awkward exchanges. Maybe she sensed his guilt. Maybe she just got bored. Either way, the attention he'd mistaken for comfort disappeared as quickly as it came at night. Michael wandered through the empty house like a ghost. Emily's things were gone, her clothes, her books, even the framed photos she loved. Only a few traces of her remained, her perfume lingering faintly in the bedroom, her favorite mug on the shelf, the soft indent on her side of the couch. Little things that used to mean nothing now felt like memories carved into his skin. He started reading her letter over and over, hoping that if he read it enough times, he could somehow undo what had happened. But every time he reached the last line, "You'll realize what you lost. By then, I'll be gone," he'd break down all over again. One evening, he sat by the lake where they used to go on Sundays. The same bench, the same cold wind, but without her, the place felt empty, like a photo missing its subject. He looked at the water and whispered, "I'm sorry, Emily. I just didn't see you slipping away." He stayed there for hours, lost in his thoughts. Then his phone buzzed. It was an email notification from Emily Parker's subject, "If you're reading this." His heart nearly stopped. His hands shook as he opened it. The message was short, written days before she left. "If you're reading this, I want you to know I don't hate you. I never did. I just couldn't keep fighting for someone who didn't notice I was drowning. Maybe one day, when the noise in your life quiets down, you'll understand what silence really sounds like. Until then, I hope you find peace, even if it's without me." Tears blurred the words. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was worse. It was forgiveness. A forgiveness he didn't deserve. He tried reaching out to her, calling from different numbers, sending emails, even writing letters he wasn't sure she'd ever read. Weeks passed with no reply. Then, one afternoon, he received a small envelope in the mail. His name was written in her handwriting, delicate and familiar. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small key. The letter read, "There's a box in the attic. It's yours now. Everything I couldn't say is inside." Michael's hands trembled as he climbed the creaky attic stairs. Dust particles danced in the light from the window. In the corner, beneath an old blanket, he found a wooden box. When he opened it, he found photos, journals, and a small video camera. The first photo was of their wedding day. The next few were of their early years, laughing, traveling, living. Then, as the stack continued, the smiles began to fade. Emily's eyes told the story he'd ignored. Her journals were filled with quiet pain. "He used to look at me like I was his world. Now he looks through me. I wonder if he'd notice if I stopped talking altogether. Love shouldn't feel this lonely." By the time he reached the last page, his tears had soaked through the paper. Finally, he turned on the video camera. The screen flickered before showing Emily sitting on their couch, her hair tied back, eyes tired but calm. "Michael," she said softly, her voice echoing through the empty attic. "If you're watching this, it means you finally started looking for me. I don't know what you were expecting to find, but I hope it's more than guilt. I hope you remember that I loved you with everything I had. I just wish that had been enough." She paused, taking a shaky breath. People think revenge is loud, anger, shouting, destruction. But real revenge is quiet. It's when someone finally stops caring, and you realize too late that you were the reason they changed. That's my revenge, Michael. Not to hurt you, but to let you live with the silence you once gave me. Then she smiled faintly, a sad kind of smile. "Take care of yourself. Goodbye." The screen went black. Michael dropped the camera, his body trembling. The words echoed in his head. "Real revenge is quiet," he screamed, hitting the floor with his fists, sobbing until his throat burned. He would have given anything to go back, to hold her, to listen, to just see her again. But the truth was brutal. Emily had taken back the one thing he'd stolen from her for years: peace. In the following days, he tried to move on, but her presence haunted him in every corner of the house. The smell of her perfume in the hallway, the faint sound of her laughter in his dreams. The voicemail she once left saying, "I love you, even when you're too busy to say it back." He played it every night until he could recite it word for word. Months passed. His friends told him to move forward. But how do you move forward when your soul is stuck in yesterday? He donated most of his things, sold the house, and moved into a small apartment downtown. He told himself he wanted a fresh start, but deep down, he just couldn't stand living among the ghosts. One night, he went to the lake again. The same bench, the same silence. This time, he brought flowers. He didn't know where she was living, or if she'd even see them. But he left them there anyway. On the card, he wrote, "I finally understand your silence." It was the loudest thing I've ever heard. He placed the flowers on the bench and walked away. The wind carried the faint scent of lavender, her favorite, and for a moment, he could almost hear her voice again. "You should have listened, Michael. I wasn't asking you to fix me. I was just asking you to notice." He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face, whispering, "I notice now. Emily, I do." But it was too late, because some realizations only come when the person you needed to tell is no longer there to hear them. 3 months had passed since Emily vanished from Michael's life, but time hadn't dulled the ache, it only sharpened it. Every morning, he'd still pour 2 cups of coffee out of habit. Every evening, he'd pause at the front door as if expecting her soft footsteps to greet him. Grief had become his shadow. Regret his punishment. He'd thought about calling her again 100 times. He'd written emails, letters, even long messages he never sent. He had no right to. What would he say now? I finally understand. That didn't bring back the years he stole from her with silence. One Friday afternoon, as the gray sky hung low over Chicago, Michael received an envelope in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, neat, deliberate. His heart stopped for a beat. It was from Emily's sister, Claire. He tore it open, hands shaking. "Michael, I didn't know if I should reach out, but I thought you deserved to know. Emily passed away last week. She'd been sick for a while, heart complications. She didn't want anyone to know. She said she didn't want pity, especially not from you. There's something she asked me to give you. I'll be at Lakeview Chapel on Sunday. Come if you want to say goodbye." The words blurred as his vision filled with tears. He sank to the floor, clutching the letter to his chest, gasping for air. His mind couldn't accept it. Emily gone? Just like that? After all the pain, the distance, the guilt, this was how it ended. He hadn't lost her when she walked out. He'd lost her now forever. That Sunday, the chapel was small and quiet. Soft music played in the background. A few close friends and family gathered in silence. Michael stood in the back, unable to move forward, afraid to face the woman he'd broken and could never apologize to. Claire approached him, her face pale but composed. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said. "I had to," Michael whispered. "I didn't know she was sick. She didn't tell anyone. She said she'd already said her goodbyes in her own way." Claire reached into her bag and handed him a small box different from the one in the attic. "She wanted you to have this." Michael opened it carefully. Inside was a flash drive and a folded note. "Michael, if you're holding this, it means my story has ended. Don't cry for me. I found peace long before today. You asked once what I wanted from you. I never wanted flowers or gifts. I just wanted you to listen. If love means anything, it's not about grand gestures. It's about presence. And though you realized it late, I know now that part of you still loved me. That's enough. Don't spend the rest of your life chasing ghosts. Live, Michael. Not for me, but for the man you could have been if you'd loved without fear. Goodbye." Emily *. His hands trembled as he held the paper to his chest. It smelled faintly of lavender and her perfume. He pressed it to his face, sobbing silently in the corner pew. That night, back in his apartment, Michael inserted the flash drive into his laptop. The screen lit up with a single video file. For Michael Final. He hesitated, then clicked play. Emily appeared sitting on the same lake bench where they'd spent so many afternoons. The sunlight caught her hair, her eyes soft but distant. She was smiling, not the forced smile she used to give him, but a calm, knowing one. "Hey, Michael," she said quietly. "If you're watching this, don't be sad. I don't want that for you." She looked away toward the water. "I just wanted to thank you for loving me once. For trying, even if it wasn't enough. I forgive you. I mean that." She paused, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I used to think revenge was about hurting someone. But I learned that real revenge is letting go and finding peace in yourself. You'll think of me sometimes, maybe when you hear a certain song or pass that lake. Don't let it break you. Let it remind you that love deserves attention while it's still here." The screen flickered slightly before fading to black. Her voice lingered like an echo. "Goodbye, my love." Michael sat there for a long time, frozen. Then, slowly, he whispered into the empty room, "Goodbye, Emily." In the months that followed, Michael changed not out of guilt, but out of something deeper. He started volunteering at a local shelter, spending weekends talking to people who had no one to listen to. He stopped working overtime, started walking by the lake again. Sometimes sitting on the same bench where she filmed her last message, he didn't bring flowers anymore, just sat there in silence, feeling the wind against his face. Hearing her words replay in his head, "Real revenge is letting go." The first time, he understood what she meant. Her revenge wasn't to destroy him. It was to leave him with silence so profound it became a mirror one that forced him to see who he'd become. One evening, he found a small child sitting on that same bench crying. The boy couldn't have been older than 8. Michael sat beside him and asked softly, "What's wrong?" "My parents are fighting," the boy said through tears. "They don't talk anymore. Mom just cries." Michael swallowed hard. "Do me a favor," he said gently. "When you go home, tell your dad to listen. Really listen. Sometimes people stop hearing each other, and by the time they do, it's too late." The boy nodded, wiping his eyes. Michael smiled faintly, watching him run off. Then he looked at the sky, now streaked with orange and gold. "Maybe that's your message, Emily," he whispered. "Not just for me, but for anyone who forgets how to love." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of lavender. Michael closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. He didn't cry this time. He just sat there, quiet, still finally understanding the peace she'd found. And in that silence, for the first time since she left, he smiled. Asterisk.